He was born into a world of privilege, but comfort never made him lazy. From the very beginning, Donald Trump had a fire that refused to be ignored. Born in Queens, New York in 1946, he wasn't the quiet type who blended in. Even as a child, he was bold, loud, and relentless. And for that, he was often misunderstood. But underneath that tough exterior was a boy who didn't want to be average, who didn't want to follow someone else's footsteps. He wanted to leave footprints of his own. Growing up, Donald was sent to military school, not as a reward, but as discipline. His energy needed channeling, and that place was supposed to do it. But instead of crushing his spirit, it sharpened him. He learned structure, leadership, toughness, qualities that would later become the backbone of his empire. While others saw a rebellious kid, Donald was quietly studying how to command attention, how to lead a team, and most importantly, how to win. After military school, he stepped into the world of business. He could have lived comfortably off his father's wealth, but that wasn't the goal. He wanted more. He took what his father built, a humble real estate business, and dreamed of skyscrapers, of casinos, of luxury hotels that kissed the sky. Everyone told him it was too risky, too big, too bold. But for Donald Trump, too big was just another way of saying worth doing. In the 1970s and 80s, New York was a tough playground. Real estate was a brutal game, filled with powerful players, endless legalities, and financial traps waiting to swallow dreamers whole. But Trump didn't blink. He took over Manhattan like a storm, launching the Grand Hyatt, transforming Fifth Avenue with Trump Tower, and redefining luxury. He wasn't just building buildings, he was building a brand. The Trump name became a symbol of bold ambition and unapologetic success. But success is never permanent. The 1990s came like a slap, and it hit hard. His businesses were drowning in debt. Bankers who once toasted to his triumphs now slammed doors in his face. Newspapers screamed, "Trump is finished." People laughed, they mocked, they said the empire was falling. But Donald, he didn't hide, he didn't run. He stood in the rubble of his dreams, and he rebuilt. He negotiated deals that seemed impossible. He clawed back from bankruptcy. He kept his name alive when everything around it was sinking. Because when the world tells you it's over, that's when true character rises. For Donald Trump, failure wasn't a wall. It was a stepping stone. And then, when most men would have settled, he started something new. He turned himself into a television icon. The Apprentice wasn't just a show, it was a stage, and he knew how to own it. Millions watched him say, "You're fired," with a mix of fear and admiration. He wasn't acting, he was being exactly who he always was, direct, bold, and unafraid to speak his mind. But perhaps the most shocking chapter was still to come. In 2015, he announced something the world didn't take seriously at first. He was running for President of the United States. People laughed again. They called it a joke. They said he had no experience, no chance, no shot. But he believed. He campaigned not like a politician, but like a fighter, with raw speeches, controversial stances, and fierce energy. He connected with millions who felt forgotten. They didn't care about polished words. They wanted someone who'd shake the system. And in 2016, the impossible happened. Donald J. Trump became the 45th President of the United States. Whether you loved or hated his policies, one thing was undeniable. He had defied every odd. A businessman who built skyscrapers now stood in the highest office in the world. He proved that belief, resilience, and unshakable confidence could move mountains. And when the media criticized him, when the world called him names, when protests roared, he didn't flinch. He stayed loud, stayed proud, stayed himself. Even after leaving office, he didn't disappear. He kept fighting. He kept building. He kept speaking to his supporters. Because Donald Trump is not just a person. He's an idea. The idea that you don't have to follow the script, that you can be bold, unapologetic, that failure isn't the end, it's fuel. that the world can throw 1,000 stones at you, but if you know who you are, you can build a castle out of every one of them. His story isn't about being perfect. It's not about being politically correct. It's about never backing down. About believing in your vision so deeply that even when the world mocks you, you smile, stand up taller, and keep moving forward. This is not just the story of Donald Trump. This is a message for every student who feels out of place, every entrepreneur who's drowning in debt, every dreamer who's been told their ideas are too crazy. If you've ever been laughed at, doubted, or underestimated, let this story remind you. Success doesn't belong to the smartest or the richest. It belongs to the bold, the unshaken, the relentless. Be loud, be different, be brave. Because that's how legacies are made. When the world expected him to fall, he rose. When they predicted his downfall, he rewrote the rules. Donald Trump wasn't just rebuilding businesses. He was rebuilding himself, brick by brick, deal by deal. Every failure became a lesson, every setback a comeback. And just when it seemed like the dust had settled, he shocked the world once more. Not with a building, not with a show, but with a microphone in front of the American flag. The day he announced his run for president, laughter echoed across newsrooms. Analysts smirked, politicians scoffed, but he stood there, bold, unfiltered, unmoved. While others read from polished scripts, he spoke raw, straight from the gut, and people listened. He didn't walk the path of a typical politician. He bulldozed through it. Debates turned into battlegrounds, critics turned into fuel. The media ran wild, but he never slowed down. He spoke for the forgotten, the factory worker, the farmer, the small-town dreamer. He gave a voice to people who felt like they no longer had one. Whether you agreed with him or not, you couldn't ignore him. He had presence, fire, relentless energy. And then, the impossible happened. On the night of November 8th, 2016, as states turned red one after another, the world held its breath. Against all odds, against the full force of the establishment, Donald J. Trump became the 45th President of the United States. A man who once built towers now stood at the peak of power. But he didn't stand there alone. He carried the hopes of millions who dared to believe in something different. His presidency was fire and thunder, loved by some, hated by others, but always in motion. Trade wars, economic booms, global summits. He led like he always had, boldly, controversially, unapologetically. And through it all, he remained unshaken by storms. Critics couldn't break him. Pressure couldn't crush him. He kept marching, kept tweeting, kept pushing, because to him, retreat was never an option. But life isn't a straight road. After 4 years, he faced another battle, a re-election fight under the storm of a pandemic, global unrest, and chaos. This time, he lost. For many, that would have been the end of the story, but not for him. He didn't vanish, he didn't hide. He returned to the stage, older, yes, but hungrier than ever, because for Donald Trump, the fight never ends. He launched new movements, spoke at rallies that drew thousands, built platforms, communities, and a voice that continues to echo, not just across America, but across the world. Because some people don't just live life, they shape it. They divide opinions, but multiply courage. They challenge the system, rattle the cage, and remind us that greatness comes in many forms, even in ways we may not expect. And in his story lies a truth so powerful that it applies to every student, every young dreamer, every entrepreneur battling fear, that no matter how many times you're counted out, your voice matters. That your path doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. That success doesn't come from never falling. It comes from rising again and again with fire in your eyes. Donald Trump's journey is not just about politics or money, it's about belief. Belief in self, belief in action, belief in never letting the world write your ending. It's the story of a man who went from military school troublemaker to billionaire builder to the president of the most powerful nation on earth. Not because he was the most liked, but because he refused to be ignored. And maybe that's the lesson. You don't need everyone to believe in you. You just need to believe in yourself so deeply, so fiercely, that the world has no choice but to watch. Because at the end of the day, it's not the smoothest talker, or the smartest planner, or the richest man who wins. It's the one who never quits. So whether you're sitting in a classroom with dreams too big for the walls, or in a small room building a business that no one understands, or lying awake wondering if your voice matters, remember this: every skyscraper starts with a single brick, every empire starts with a single idea, and every legend begins with a single decision not to give up.